All right. Good afternoon, folks. Welcome back to the Prospero.Ai stock market live stream. Hope you're having a great day. The markets are green, so that's always good for our portfolios, right? As I guess as long as we're net long. But the markets are looking good today. The QQQ up 0.6%, SPY up 0.5%, Dow Jones up 0.8%, and the Russell, the lagging Russell, still up 0.1% on the day. So green across the board. We have a lot going on in the markets, a lot of stories to get to today. CPI tomorrow morning, big data for the market to digest. And we have earnings season kicking off on Friday officially with the big banks, a lot of them reporting earnings, and then some to follow the next week after. Netflix is one that I'm sure we'll be talking about in future streams. But then it really heats up in mid-October and going forward. So we're going to highlight earnings season. Earnings season. What are we going to expect of this earnings season as the markets are hitting all-time highs or approaching all-time highs? So a little bit of an earnings season preview to kick us off today, and then we have an interesting fact about Boeing and Nvidia that you probably didn't know. Probably didn't know how these two stocks related to one another, but it's a funny little fact, and it's a little bit showing the sign of the times that the market and the business world are in with AI kind of taking over Boeing, which was once a pillar of industry in America. Then we have some stories that are building upon stuff we've talked about on prior streams. So we have Amazon furthering their expansion into the medical industry. They made a new announcement today about what they're expecting to release in 2025. So I'll fill you in on that and what it means for Amazon stock. And then if you're a normal stream viewer, you've probably heard us talk about the monopoly situation going on. Amazon and Google are two of the top targets of the DOJ, and Google got some bad news last night. We've talked about it before about how Google they were considering, or it was being floated around that they might consider breaking up Google stock. And I believe when we've talked about it on the stream before, we were kind of thinking along the lines of, yeah, they will say it, but they'll probably never actually do it. But it seems like they're really considering actually doing it, as the DOJ came out and said that that is one of the steps that they're considering taking for remedying this antitrust situation that's going on. So not a good day for Google stock, as the market's been higher today. I believe Google's down about 2%. So it's starting to affect the stock. Seems like that story is getting more legitimacy. So we'll discuss that and what it means for Google going forward, and maybe why the DOJ seems to be focusing more on Google than any other big tech company. And then we have a stock that has just ripped like crazy recently, Palantir. It's about to cross the 100 billion market cap level for the first time ever in the company's history. How has it been able to have this performance? Hello, George. Welcome to the stream. And kind of what is Palantir going to do in the future? Is it a burgeoning $1 trillion company at our midst right now? We'll discuss Palantir in full detail. And then we have a story about Weight Watchers, which you guys probably don't pay too much attention to their stock on a daily basis, but you would have liked to have been a shareholder today specifically. The stock was up over 50% at one point. More news about the GLP-1 drug for them, which I'll give you the full details on when we get to it. But is this the tippity top of the market now that Weight Watchers is even capitalizing on it? We'll see. And then if we have time at the end of the stream before we do the model portfolio update, we'll highlight Elliott wave theory. If anybody in our stream is someone who likes technicals and patterns, and you haven't heard or seen this before, you'll probably be interested in this. I've seen it. A lot of people think it's highly predictive of moves that stocks will make, especially over a longer period of time. So if we don't get to that today, we'll cover it Monday, but it should be an interesting topic nonetheless. So, George, what I wanted to start our stream off with today, because I'm seeing that earnings season is just about to kick off. We have the big banks reporting on Friday, some of them, and then we have Netflix next week, and then things really heat up in the following weeks after that with big tech and basically all of the earnings coming through. I would expect that the market's expecting that earnings will be strong with us having so much strength in the market, reaching new all-time highs or approaching them. How do you feel heading into this earnings season? Does it feel any different from recent ones prior? Just what's your general thoughts about this upcoming earnings season?
Um, it always seems like it comes so fast, right? It goes and then it's back already. Like I think my thoughts are right. There's no reason not to be bullish on it. Both with the direction the market's going. You've got to kind of assume that there's some excitement, and there's always people in the know about that. And then you kind of have to look at the last earnings season, where about 80% of the companies beat estimates, right? I think we might see some. I'm a little concerned about things like consumer goods. But I think for the most part, especially if you think of like the things that we love, especially on the long side, you're talking about, large cap growth, anywhere from big tech. We obviously been playing financial stocks more. Like I actually can't remember the last time we had Apollo and I mean, two finance stocks. We got an Apollo and PayPal in right now. So yeah, I think that based on everything that we're seeing, we got to be pretty bullish about the numbers. But as we always caveat, don't forget about like some of the macro bear forces that we got there.
Do you know if there's any specific reason for the order of the reports that we get? Because it always seems like big banks lead us off, and then it's kind of followed by like the bigger tech companies, and it ends with the smaller growth, smaller companies at the to wrap it up at the end. So, is there any reason for that flow, or is it just kind of random?
That's a really good question, and I don't really have any idea. I think that I mean to a certain extent, right? You can choose when you report, like you can choose your quarters in terms of like the end of your fiscal year and things like that. And I think you can change that. But I mean, I think to a certain extent, and this is my best guess, not anything that I have knowledge of, there's always history in the market, right? So if you have like an old company like JP Morgan, right, that's been around forever, and it's just reporting at the start of the quarter, right? You're probably as a finance stock that wants to compete for dollars, um, wanting to report around the same time as them, right? Because like it's not great for you if you're say like Bank of America, right? Which I think is I don't know how old that is versus JP Morgan. I know Wells is very old too. But let's just say you're a newer bank. We're guessing Bank of America. I don't really know. But you're a newer bank, right? The last thing you kind of want to do if JP Morgan's reporting early is report at the end, right? Because a lot of people are going to be, especially if it's a good report, buying that stock, right? Buying the stock, and they're less likely you're not as much on their mind, and you could be losing a lot of dollars allocations to people in the meantime. And the other thing is, you might say, "Hey, George, like, isn't that true for the reverse?" Well, the market goes up a lot more than it goes down, which also kind of corresponds to a similar rule where companies generally do better and better, at least with profits, not necessarily, growth slows down, as we obviously talk about. Maybe not as true today. But yeah, I think that due to that, you don't really want to be caught behind a good quarter where you're just kind of more forgotten. Obviously, if it's a bad quarter, it might work in the opposite direction for you. But given that general rule that we just had, where you're assuming that more quarters are going to be good than bad, the market is going to go up more than it goes down. That would make you not really want to report behind your competitors. But you can kind of see differently, like the chip stocks are kind of like all over the place, right? But a lot of the like they're not as direct competitors as say like JP Morgan and Bank of America, which are generally doing very similar things. Like the difference between Nvidia and Broadcom, even though they both have AI exposure, their companies are pretty different and their strategies are pretty different. So it's one of those things that it's nice when you get a report that say Nvidia is doing well and it helps Broadcom, or vice versa. We've seen a little bit of that, like reporting on the AI market growing. But generally, it's a very long answer for me to say I don't really know, but those are all the possibilities in my mind.
Well, it sounds to me like it's your famous Occam's razor. Like it seems to make sense. These companies, it's monkey see, monkey do. You want to be near your competitors, exposure, and you mentioned how the
Yeah,
market.
but I
Tip,
don't know. Like
yeah,
I'm saying, I don't know if there's regulations. I don't know
yeah,
if like I don't know if or there's recommendations, like the SEC recommends that if you're a bank stock, you do it early in the quarter, or like just so that part I don't know.
yeah. And you mentioned how the market typically goes up more than not, and I think something that's interesting is this weekend, I believe, is a 2 year of this bull market being in place. So I guess 2 years ago was the market bottom in October. So kind of an interesting stat. And one of the companies that has benefited the most across the past 2 years is obviously Nvidia, which is kind of the leader of this whole, I guess, bull cycle, you would call it. And one of the companies that has not is Boeing. And there was kind of a funny stat I came across today. Obviously, Boeing struggled specifically recently as they're unable to come to an agreement with their mechanist union. Um, and the stat I saw was that Jensen Huang's net worth is now bigger than Boeing's market cap, which is just a sign of the times that we're in, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm very proud of my of a guess that I made here, where Stephen, I was just like, I think it would actually be interesting to know when the last time Boeing had a bigger market cap than Nvidia. And Stephen asked me that, and I guessed the right year.
Yeah,
I said 2019. Um, and so yeah, I was like score one for the George computer. I was really like I was really doing some mental math in there that I don't think I could even share, just kind of based on what I knew on Nvidia's growth cycle. And I was like, the one thing I don't know here is like when Boeing really started to like fall from grace, because I know for a while they've got their fingers in a lot of pies, and they're a big company. Um, but yeah, it's we've got so many of these interesting relationships in the market now, and I mean they all kind of circle around the same thing, that people are valuing technology a lot higher. You could say growth, but there's growth companies that are not being valued as high as things with tech, AI exposure, anything like that. Um so I think that is how we're getting like such interesting valuations, because increasingly I think we just see people betting on AI winning, and the AI winners, whether or not some of it, and I think we might talk about this later, some of it is just people betting that other people are going to bet on it more, and that it's going to go up, or they really believe that you can buy in and it's still undervalued. um I think we're just seeing people willing to pay more for this stuff. um so yeah, I think it's a very, very interesting time. And like, yeah, when you look at like Tesla versus like the old automakers, even like Toyota, it trades at like a pretty big multiple above it for a smaller company, right? In terms of revenue, profits, you name it. And then yeah, I think just increasingly we are just starting to see difficult valuations for companies that don't have this kind of growth tech exposure. And we're starting to see difficult valuate, like Boeing's got the other thing going for it, where it's just like you might call it the opposite of what Tesla and Nvidia has going for it, where I think it's probably been beaten up a little too much just because people don't like it, and it's got like negative sentiment in the market.
it's
But
it's got the Zuckerberg vibes.
yeah, the old Zuckerberg
Yeah,
vibes. I actually saw that. Like, I don't. I comment on the TikToks as little as possible, because sometimes I get into arguments with people on TikTok. But I did see that we had a video recently that had 5,000 likes, which was crazy. That was like the one I was like reciting my history on Wall Street. Um, but only 10 people saved that. But the Zuckerberg one that was posted today had something like 400 likes, but like 57 saves. So I don't know what that means in TikTok terms. But a lot of people want to keep watching that one, I guess.
Yeah. Before we move on from this Boeing and Nvidia topic, let me just share the market caps that were actually mentioned. So, in 2019, uh, okay, so this is from companies' market cap. So in 2019, Nvidia was 144 billion. These are year-end numbers, and now it's 3.24 trillion. Insane. And then Boeing was 183 billion in 2019, and now it's 92 billion. So completely opposite directions for both those companies, but crazy to see. Um, the next couple stories we're going to talk about, they're kind of building upon stories that we talked about in the past. So if you're a usual viewer, this is kind of helpful information because it's rounding out some of the stuff we've been talking about. Um, Another example of Amazon furthering their push into the medical field, which we've highlighted. They announced that same day prescription delivery is going to expand to nearly half of the U.S. in 2025. The stock is higher today. Um, it just seems day by day like Amazon is going to take over the medical space to me. Is that how you're feeling too? Like every move they make, it just seems like nobody
I
can
mean, I've
compete
been
with them.
saying that for a bit. And actually, I saw that they're hiring a lot of people in New York, and I think they're preparing to distribute those drugs, right? I mean, I don't think it's going to be drones yet. So I think it's going to be a whole like force of people like sorting, distributing, um, which is kind of interesting, like in terms of like the legalities there. Because I know you have to have like go through a pretty um, rigorous like I want to say education licensing process to be a pharmacist. I imagine all the people handling the drugs do still have to be pharmacists, but it's like, are there enough pharmacists like just around that could be like sorting the new massive amount of like in like warehouse facilities and like getting these prescriptions, or are robots allowed to do it? Like I don't really like that. I don't really know the logistics on.
Well, when I was just out of college, I was doing Instacart, and there was like pharmacy delivery on there, and I was able to do it. So I don't know what the rules are, but you can be a normal person and handle them, which is
Maybe they have to like go to a pharmacy to grab. Maybe they kind of just fill the prescription on your behalf and then go and grab it. But I'm not sure. I mean, I guess that would work for same day. I mean, prescriptions aren't like slow. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that it's just like that's the problem. Like as much as I'm just like, traditionally I'll vote with my dollars, and I don't particularly like how Amazon treats workers. And I think, but it's like one of those things where it's just like, unless everyone, like if I'm just stopping to use Amazon, I'm not going to make a difference. If perhaps there were like a huge number of people that like signed on, deleted the app, maybe I would be like, okay, yeah, I'll be part of that movement, like to like hopefully force them to treat workers better. But like the other side of it is like, oh, they just make things so easy. And like the problem is like not only do they make things so easy, but like the number of businesses that exist. Like there used to be a Best Buy near this house and like the house I grew up. It's not there anymore. So it's just like even if I wanted to be like, you know what, I want something today, and I need this piece of electronic equipment, and you know not gonna do that. Like I'd have to get on a subway like to do that now. And it would take like probably like over, an hour, maybe an hour and a half of my time, like to go in and do that. And I mean, maybe that's a bit of exaggeration. Nonetheless, it's just like they make things easier and easier, and it's more and more of a one-stop shop. Like I order groceries from them at Whole Foods, right? It's just like so much easier than going and like doing that yourself. And like it's even just like I like to have sparkling waters, right? And like even that aspect of like not having to carry like a bunch of sparkling waters home myself, even if I could like buy the rest of the stuff, right? It's just they just make it very easy. and they're going to make everything easier. And the more that I can do, and like the more that it's just like, okay, they can fill your prescriptions easily, and like I'm sure they're going to do a lot to like make that part very seamless. So it's just like, yeah, it's they're gonna eat the world. I mean, we always talk about like Amazon as like the best investment for the next 10 years. And it's just like you can't, and the reason we talk about that is just like nobody's better than them at building new products, entering new markets, right? And it's not even close. Even if you look at like Microsoft, which is having a big resurgence, like what is that resurgence from, right? A lot of it is from acquisitions like GitHub and OpenAI, and those are kind of like the two biggest ones. Um, but they've made other acquisitions, right? They're not necessarily doing the innovations themselves. And like while Amazon does make acquisitions, um, you can't really like I think they what it, like I think on this one they did a big prescription company. I forgot what they like on the pharmacy front or whatever. Um, but like that tends to be the exception, not the rule. Like they've built countless other major business lines for themselves internally, and that's what just like completely differentiates them from the group.
So throughout that, I don't know what happened, but your mic kind of sounded a little off to me. Maybe our chat can comment and see if they're hearing the same stuff. It was like we could understand what you were saying. It sounded, I don't know, a little different though. Um,
Does this sound better if I get closer, or like what's
oh,
the
sounds perfect like that.
okay? I'm gonna get up and rejigger it a little closer to me. The
Okay.
problem is sometimes it doesn't like it ends up stealing the focus away from my face if I get it too close. So you can't win with this thing.
No, it was good for 90% of it
All
so
right,
far. I don't know. It was some weird hiccup, but I think it's okay.
we're getting it. It's closer to my face now. How do we
Yeah,
feel?
it sounds good.
Okay.
Did you see the comment on I think it was our last stream. Someone mentioned that orange thing behind you. They're asking what it is. It just caught my attention. Maybe maybe you want to
So
explain it.
so it is a piece of glass that my girlfriend brought that was supposed to go somewhere else, and it didn't fit on this shelf. And I was like, I'll take it for my live stream. It's actually like really old. I think it was like hand blown or something in like I want to say like the 1930s, but 60s. She's
Oh,
here.
there you
She the 1960s. Um
go.
L.E.
Pretty.
Smith. So yeah, there you
So there
go.
you go.
It's I had the bull and the bear here with me for a little, but they returned to my office.
Hmm. So I'm happy we got to that. But going back to the Amazon discussion, you were kind of highlighting all of the great aspects of their business and how they make life so easy for people. Maybe that's kind of going to answer what I'm going to ask you next, relating to this Google part of the story, because um, we've covered the DOJ antitrust case against Google before, and I feel like before when we've talked about it, we kind of brought up how they could be split up, but it didn't seem like we thought that would be the actual route they would go. But now Google stock is down today after the DOJ came out and said that they are considering that step as an antitrust remedy. So it's seeming more real and real the more times they mention it. Um, it seems like Google's facing the most pressure out of any of the big mega cap tech stocks. And we talked about how, there's a lot of monopolies around. Maybe why is Google getting all this attention over others?
It's such funny timing, right? And I feel like the big thing here uh is kind of just like maybe they're just picking on Google because they're weak. Because this is when their monopoly like looks the weakest. Like Perplexity is like probably the most serious threat that they've had in a while. And then you have something like, you have what Apple's trying to do with AI on the phone and just like Chat GPT in general. It's a really strange time to be like, we have to break up the monopoly because honestly, by the time they like get the legislation through, uh it might not really the argument for it as a monopoly might not be there. But maybe that's why it's happening, right? Maybe it's just theater and they don't want to have to go after like a monopoly case that they'd actually have to break something up. And maybe they're just like, because everybody's complained about Google as a monopoly forever. So they could just be like, hey, see, we're listening to you. We're going after the monopolies. Um, Even though, like, at this point, like, especially with the threats and especially with like Amazon going into like medicine, like Amazon is like the way bigger monopolistic threat at this point. Um, but they're not really a traditional monopoly. And I'll explain why. Traditional monopolies tend to mean that you own the inputs, right? Or like you're going, we talked about Standard Oil, right? And you might call like the Google algorithm that generates the results owning the inputs, right? So Amazon's kind of a rare case. And that's why we talked about AWS kind of being a different step for them, because that's them like actually owning all of the infrastructure and also like expanding out um, in terms of like vertical integration when you're talking about like housing data as well as dealing with suppliers that need that data from you. That's more like vertical, but not traditional vertical integration. But they actually like they're more horizontal. Um, than vertical, but like not traditionally, right? Because like the vertical that we're talking about is also more just like owning the process, right? Making a lot of the goods, making the sparkling water that I'm talking about ordering. Although they do make some, but like I would guess that the vast majority of things sold on Amazon, they're not owning the inputs to. So that kind of makes them something. And if you think about, we talked about telecom earlier in the week, that is the classic owning the inputs, right? That's just like, we got all the phone stuff and you can only come to us. Um, but Amazon is kind of a non traditional monopoly in that sense, in the fact that, like, actually they don't. And in a lot of their businesses, own all the inputs. And even in like the drug business, right? They don't own the inputs, right? And that might be intentional. The way I think AWS was just kind of like low hanging fruit, but they tend not to do that. And maybe that's very explicitly for their legal team, because traditionally, I can't think of audience. You can come on. I can't think of um, a monopoly where they didn't really own, like the monopoly wasn't really owning the inputs, but they clearly have a monopoly, because like one of the things about like one of the telltale signs of a monopoly is controlling pricing, right? And also controlling supply. And you could argue they don't really control supply, but they kind of do, right? Because they can choose what is sold on Amazon and what isn't, right? That's not necessarily like owning the supply like we're talking about, but it is controlling the supply, and they control the pricing, right? Which are key elements of a monopoly. And the key element of the monopoly too is like they'll get to a point where like Amazon could start charging like 20% more than everybody else as opposed to like the same price. And like the stores won't really exist for you to compete, right? You might be able to like go direct to the distributor, but like you might have to be waiting 2 weeks as opposed to getting it tomorrow. And I've made that choice time and time again, where I'm just like, well, it's like not only do I not want to wait 2 weeks, I don't know if that 2 weeks is real. When you go direct to a supplier, I've had plenty of like uh plenty of times where that 2 weeks turns into a month or longer, right? So part of it is the reliability. So, conceivably, they could just at some point just be like, you know what, we're not even the lowest prices anymore. We're marking it up 25, 30% when they've already like driven out all of the, competitors out the door, right? And that's the sign of monopoly, because they're kind of getting to the point that they could do that, and arguments could be made. Um, the other part of it is like if they have competition, right? That's another big part of a monopoly. And it's just like, who's their competition, right? I think it's kind of convenient. Like some of the stuff, like, Pinduo, do it, like, Alibaba, um, I guess not Alibaba, but what's the Pinduoduo company that's like, I want to say it's like Wish, but it's not Wish.
Timo?
Um, Temu. Yeah. You could argue that that is a competitor. Um, but it really isn't. I don't know how much of the market share they have in the US. I don't think anyone would be considered a classic competitor, especially if you look at certain verticals. But that's what makes it tough, right? Because I'm sure Amazon lawyers would argue, like in XYZ categories, we actually don't have all the market share. And people order, I think something like sheets, if you looked at it, right? I think people probably still order sheets from like a lot of different, bespoke providers, not just Amazon. Although I do feel like they're getting more and more of the sheets on their platform. Um, but anyway, that's a pretty long rant on monopolies, and I mean there are a lot of companies, like as I said, Microsoft um, could be classically considered a monopoly, but it's just one of those things that Google was the really obvious one, but the timing is very, very strange.
Counting down the days till Prospero's a monopoly, George. Before we get to our next topic, I want to highlight this question because Jonathan asked it a few minutes ago. Uh, he said, "I know you're not a huge fan of Bitcoin, but the the signals for coin stock, Coinbase, look pretty good. Net option sentiment's been at 100 for a while, high upside. What do you think of coin?"
So, I mean, I think, sorry, sorry.
Not a ringing endorsement of coin stock, Jonathan. No, I'm kidding.
So, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. Like, I have to just be like very sure about some kind of macro circumstances around um Bitcoin to get it. I mean, that's strong. Social sentiment is at 8 right now, and I generally don't really invest in things that are that low in social sentiment. I don't know what that's about. Maybe somebody else knows. But, it's the same thing. It's just like it's always very hard for me to pull the trigger on coin when I know there's non-transparent options markets, right? I think that that is a really, really tough thing because um even institutions that are investing in coin options, they don't necessarily have all the visibility to the levered bets in Bitcoin, right? Or cryptocurrencies, right? So it's kind of a rare situation where I'm more inclined to say maybe the institutions that are betting on this aren't completely in the know because they're not the power base in this. There's different, whales and people that than the American stock market, especially, that really have the best data on this stuff. So that's the problem for me. And it's just like I got it. Like, not only do I take cryptocurrencies with a grain of salt, I even take things like our own signals with a grain of salt around crypto. Because generally, like what I rely so much on when it comes to our signals is I'm just like, look, if I see a strong net option sentiment, um, I'm feeling great that institutions are kind of overwhelmingly positive on it. And a part of me wants to say, yeah, since they're overwhelmingly positive on it, I should be betting on it. But another part of me just says, like, they could be wrong. They're not in this situation in traditional equities, right? Those institutions are going to be the ones in the know, no question. That's what we depend on, right? But in this crypto situation, I don't even know it well enough to know when I could say they're in the know and when they aren't. Um, so that's hard.
And
Or I should make one more point. They could also be just like heavy short um crypto, right? And we'd have no way of knowing that. And a bunch of people could be heavy short crypto, right? We wouldn't have those transparent option markets. And then they could just be like long these coin options as a hedge, right? So we get back into that when you start dealing with other pieces of collateral. You start talking about net option sentiment having many more holes in the logic than it normally does.
mhm. Oh, it's an interesting point. And one stock that I definitely want to bring up on the stream today because it's just had such a strong rally recently is Palantir stock. It's nearing the $100 billion market cap level, which it would cross for the first time if it goes up a little bit more. I think they have like a 97 billion market cap right now. A lot of social media hype about Palantir stock in the long run. It seems like it could be one of the major AI winners. So with the huge cult following, I think a pretty uh, long-term minded people think this company could be the next $1 trillion tech or AI stock. How do you feel about Palantir in the near term and the long term as an AI play?
I think it's really funny that Haley just put in all the information on the base. They were you got to comment on the last live, Haley. They were that's where the question was asked. Uh, but I can put that in for you. Anyway, uh, Palantir is a tough one, right? Uh, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand AI when they invest in AI, right? Palantir, for a while, one of the smartest people I know who actually built SecDB, Goldman's security, like their universal securities database. He said that Palantir basically does external joins, right? And that's basically taking a data set. A really good example is like they help in crime, and like an example of an external join would be joining, say, license plate camera data from one state to another, because they're going to be doing different data practices, and you need to like locate how to like merge that data, right? So Palantir, and like there's a really interesting history with them like getting fired by Coca-Cola because Coca-Cola was like, I don't know, we're spending $1 million on this contract and I don't really know what you do, basically, or I don't know where the value is, said differently. So there's this one side to Palantir where their opportunity is tremendous, no doubt. And they've kind of got the brand at this point to be who you go to, especially as like a government or a big company that wants to get a project done and needs help, kind of like a consulting and technology hybrid, which by the way was what my first company was trying to build. But they did it way better, and they actually started, I think, maybe around the same time. Anyway, um, that's the problem with these, like, and we talk about it with Nvidia sometimes in the China risk, right? I think that's the problem with retail. Retail often just plays the reward, right? They don't play the risk. And that's what makes it personally for me challenging to, I've taken Palantir for some short-term runs in the investing and the trading portfolio because it's an interesting company and it's got a very interesting market position that I don't think anyone else is in that well. But I do think, I've talked about this often, I do think longer term, the cloud providers could start competing with Palantir. And that is what I would say a risk factor that some people might not be aware of. Other than even the fact that their market might be limited, right? And their market might be limited ultimately because I think more and more people are being trained in the types of data science, and I would say data management to get to data science that they do really well. So I think there's a world where people start either with all of these AI startups doing it in a lot more automated way, or just hiring people internally. I think there's a world where Palantir very much doesn't reach the upside that people are baking into it. Now, to offer a third perspective in this, there's also the argument that, like, if you're just looking over the next year, like, could they just beat earnings estimates, right? Without kind of bumping in some of these long-term concerns. And to that, I would say easily, right? So there is that comfort, but I think there's the added risk, to give the last one, of these momentum trades just turning around, right? and basically Palantir getting too much momentum and then swinging hard back in the other way. And I think it's like, I think if you're in this trade, you must have trailing stop losses or at least a stop loss, because I think that could be a quick jump down. And sometimes you have the stop loss not because you won't see it going down, just because it's very easy to talk yourself, if Palantir goes up another 60%, right? It's very easy to talk to yourself that 1, 2, maybe 3, 4 bad days are going to turn around and it's going to go back in the other direction. The stop loss is there actually to just make sure to take you and your own bullishness out of the equation and level set on like what you think a fair, especially trailing stop loss, I think is great. It's going to be where it's just like, you know what? It never hurts to get out of something with a 25% trailing stop loss, right? And you could always say, hey, I'm actually going to set a limit buy order to get back in if it gets to like, 10% above where that 25% triggered, right? So if it's coming back around, I'm automatically triggered back in, right? But it's got that heavy risk profile. And just to summarize the three main risks, right? You got that momentum swinging the other way risk, which is kind of like, I'd say, actually the biggest short-term risk, right? And then you also have long-term risks of other people taking their business, because what they do is actually pretty hands-on. And they built a big workforce, but that also means there might be cheaper alternatives coming for them. Or building out internally could be a cheaper alternative because you actually want to own the tech, which a lot of people do, especially if they're spending a lot of money. And then the third thing is like a longer, I'd say, existential threat of like Amazon, Microsoft, Google actually starting to get into that kind of hybrid consulting type business more. And the risk of that, while that's like long term, there's also this added part of the risk, um, where one of those companies could just make an announcement that they were basically getting into Palantir's business. And that would be like a 20, 40% down for Palantir instantaneously.
I think that's great perspective for a Palantir shareholder to hear. I know we're pushing on time, so I think we should probably do the switch over. Although this Weight Watchers topic I thought was pretty interesting, but do you want to try to squeeze it in, or should we just switch?
We let's cover that quickly. I think I can get the rest done quickly.
Yes. So Weight Watchers up 50% today after they announced they're getting into the GLP-1 drug market. They're going to be selling the semaglutide compound that's within all of these GLP-1 drugs. It seems like the literal gold rush for companies nowadays, but I don't know. Does this feel a little toppy to you? The fact that Weight Watchers up 50%.
This just reminds me of when everybody was talking about AI on their conference calls, and
Mm-hmm.
to make the stock go up. I mean, I do believe that they're serious, but it's also kind of a desperate move, right? Because I feel like the whole Weight Watchers thing was like their points and counting the points and like eating right, and it's just like, what do you really need Weight Watchers for, right? If you're just not hungry and it's like suppressing your appetite, it kind of renders the rest of the services useless. So then it's kind of just like, okay, why are you going to Weight Watchers as opposed to like maybe a doctor for your GLP-1? So I mean, well, I do think it's like probably just to save themselves, right? They need something like that, and I'm sure like it's up today, but the stock has been getting hit due to the proliferation of these GLP-1s. Um, but so I mean, I think it's a move that they have to make. But sometimes you can never underestimate. Like, I don't know what their outreach is, and you can never underestimate the power of a mailing list, right? And maybe a lot of these people that maybe didn't know that they could even get GLP-1s through Weight Watchers, they find out, and they could get a lot of sales, especially if they can send it through the mail. Um, it'll be interesting to watch this play out, but there's just that other side to it where it's just like, it is kind of still like a medical thing, and like Weight Watchers, I feel like is kind of like a punchline at this point. So I don't know how many people would like take them seriously enough to get like something that's uh more of a medical thing. But I think we're ready for the switch over, unless you have any follow-ups.
I was just gonna say that even the rally we've seen today, they're still down 81% on the year, so it's not a good state of things for Weight Watchers. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean it's a desperate move.
yeah,
Um, but it's kind of an interesting reversal for a company that kind of praise and overcharges desperate people to see them in a to see them in a desperate situation. Because like I don't know, I've known some people that have been on Weight Watchers, and I feel like it never works, and they're just
hmm
like stressing about these points, and they quit. That's been pretty much. I don't know tons of people, but that's been my general experience. Um, all right. Now we're good, right?
yeah,
Gotta hurry.
yeah. We'll see you on the other side. It's gonna be a race to the finish line with 14 minutes left. So see you in the Prospero.AI laboratory. Everybody, stick with me here for a few moments. I see we've had over 1,100 people in the stream so far today. So thank you all for tuning in so much. Hopefully you like the content, like the topics. Hopefully it helps you in your investing, trading, however you manage your own money. But what I want to do right now, before George comes back in this stream, is I'm gonna take you guys into the Prospero app, and I'm gonna update you on the QQQ and the SPY net options sentiment. So the markets have been rallying recently and up today, and the signals have looked good for the QQQ and the SPY. But let's see right now if they are still holding up. So I'm gonna first look at the QQQ, which has a net option sentiment of 61 right now, which is firmly in the bullish level. And now we'll switch over to the SPY, which has been lagging the QQQ recently in the readings. So let's see if it's catching back up. And it is raising a bit. It is at 47 in the net option sentiment, which is up from, it was in the high 30s last week. So it's good to see it starting to go higher, but still lagging the QQQ. So some discrepancy we're going to see shake out there if the SPY is going to uh, keep going higher and close the gap with the QQQ, or if the reverse will happen. And a lot of that stuff will shake out with the CPI data we're getting tomorrow, with the bank earnings we're getting on Friday, more earnings season to come soon after. So we'll see which direction the market decides ultimately to go. But for now, it seems higher. Q4 looks like it's off to a good start. Actually, I think the QQQ is still not at an all-time high, but the SPY is. So interesting there that the net option sentiment is so bullish on the QQQ, but the SPY is the one that got back to all-time highs quicker. Uh, I think that's a good sign for the QQQ of reaching them pretty shortly, which we are still about 10 points below. So maybe we'll see that all happen in the next 2 trading days with the CPI report. Although, with the Fed cutting rates now, I wonder if the CPI report will have as much of an impact as it did when they were on the rate raising cycle. It'll be interesting to see the market's reaction tomorrow to that new information.
All right, here we go. Lightning speed.
Lightning speed, yes. This is one of the latest starts we've had.
I mean, I'm getting into a bit of a groove with
Momentum.
the momentum score, so I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful I can get it done. Also, the I don't know if Brent listens to this, but congratulations, he just had a kid. And I was definitely a little gun. Like, I didn't like doing his job in addition to my other jobs. What's QQQ and SPY net option sentiment?
QQQ is 61 and SPY is 47.
Wow, it has been on fire. I should have bought. I bought Broadcom in the other portfolio yesterday. I should have bought Broadcom in this one. That's my regret.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see the QQQ net option sentiment remain stronger from the SPY. It's just me and you up here right now. I don't know if you want to share your screen.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I'm rushing
Just looking
to
out
get
for
to
our
the end.
viewers. The
Yeah,
loyal people who stick all the way to the end.
I know. I'm so interested to know how many of the Twitter people. Okay.
We continue to see a lot of volatility in these caps, but we are seeing a bit of a pattern towards larger caps overall in the last few days. Keep our eyes on that.
Uh-oh. Oh, give me that. Okay. We need this. And then we need this. Okay, and now we want. Oh, nice. Looking good on the winds. I didn't realize we had Lucid. Oh, don't have this. I got rid of this. Okay. Boop, boop, boop. All right. So we will have our exits ready. Yeah, I think we already have. We have 67 longs and I think many less short. So yeah, we've been pretty well ready for this, although maybe too diversified. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot. I definitely want to look at that. I think we got to cut some longs. Some of the like SPY longs as we do this. Okay, hopefully we have this now. 353. All right. We're going to have to be very, very quick here. Can we do it? All right. Are you the right one? 1553. Yes. Okay. So we want this. Oh. That's not what we wanted. SDL. I don't think I've ever seen that. Oh, not going to make the cut. Actually, it is. We're going to cut PayPal because we've got wasting precious time. I do not want to inspect the code. All right, we got this. And then I'm gonna cut that. We already have that. We're gonna cut that. We already have that. We got plenty of cube. Damn, Sava's at 12. I think we already have a Sava open, right? That is a terrible momentum score. Okay, let's see what we got here.
We do, yep.
We added snow already, but it's continuing. I think we got MCK yesterday. I don't think we need a ton of IFF. Yeah, why not? ESTC has been coming on. Yeah, oh, here's some smaller cap. 68, 60, okay. Yeah, this is exactly the kind of thing we want. No, God. We don't have time for this. Okay. We do have a Sava open?
Yes, we do.
All right, is it a win?
Yep.
All right, we're going more. But we wanted some utilities. How's everything doing? That's a little high. Do we have any other utilities? Yeah, we're just, we're catching this utilities wave. We have a lot of exposure to the smaller cap healthcare, but you know what? We want to hedge well. Sam. That's good. We want some industrials. That's too small. I think we have a Xerox open, right?
What's the ticker?
XRX. You don't know that by now? We play it all the time. I'm disappointed in you. So disappointed.
We do, and it's a win.
Yeah, I don't think
We actually have two.
I don't think we need to over-index on that. Ooh. It's a close one. God, it's a costly time. Okay. Now we are. Smallest. Oh, all right. Do we want to cut? How's Baba doing? No, I don't want to cut that yet. Maybe one of them. I just don't. I can't ignore this momentum score as much as I'd like to. Okay. And we wanted to get rid of some of these. Anything else? I think one of these LVSs. One of the LVSs, one of the XOMs. Yeah, that's smart. One of the dashes. We're very weighted towards this. Although, I mean, maybe I shouldn't be too particular, but whatever. Okay, we're not getting out of many shorts, so it's good that we got out of the loss. Okay, 4 o'clock. Bingo bango, we did it.
Wow.
13 minutes, right? I think.
Yeah, that was record.
It's the new system. All the assist goes to momentum score. Moves.
Honestly, I think that's a huge, like, the fact that you do it that quick and the performance, it's like, I think it's a big boost for like anybody who, watches it and then sees the performance that we have.
Yeah, I mean, you're missing out on the trading letter if you're not getting it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, I only have one way I don't see any comments, only one way to end the stream, and that's let's go Mets. Big game in an hour. So all eyes turn to that after our stream's over. But have a great day,
I
everybody.
think the Yankees are playing tonight too.
Yeah, they are. They are. Our
They
little brother.
disappointed, but we could talk about that. Hey, Steve Cohen, I might have written him off too quickly.
Yeah, but hope everybody has a great day, great rest of the week. We'll see you guys on Monday.
Yep, thank you.
All right.